Monday morning, it's Mansfield today. Welcome to a new week and the business report brought to you as usual by Capital Legacy, your number one provider of wills and estate administration. Chris Gibbons is our man on the spot. Chris, morning to you. And once again, we wake up with the country on the rack in the vice-like grip of failing state enterprises.
Good morning, Jeremy. Yes, absolutely. No question about it. We're not just talking about load shedding at the moment. Load shedding, of course, which reared its head at the end of last week, over the weekend, and is going to be with us for a chunk of this week, I understand. On, off, you know how it goes. That's been discussed ad infinitum, so no need to rehash all of that all over again, although it is probably the most severe problem facing our economy. But take Transnet as another example of the problems that we're mired in. South Africa is a country, as you know, that exports commodities, precious metals, not just things like gold and platinum, but more prosaic things like manganese and iron ore and coal. Now, coal producer Thungela Resources says logistical problems are affecting the movement of coal. That's a catastrophe at a time of global energy shortages, which have pushed the price of coal much higher. Kumba Iron Ore has just issued a statement saying its product is being held up at mines in the Northern Cape because of rail bottlenecks. As I say, this is all down to Transnet. How much is at stake? Well, difficult to quantify at the moment, but suffice it to say, exports of coal and iron ore last year brought in a total of 217 billion rand.
But I mean, Chris, the thing is, there doesn't seem to be any end in sight here. I mean, it's year on year, it's month on month. It just carries on and on.
Jeremy, there really are very few state-owned enterprises which are operating with any degree of efficiency, and many of which are just hopeless wrecks. It's as simple as that. And it's the same problem, I think, which has caused Treasury Deputy DDG Ishmael Mamoniat to complain that South Africa is in danger of becoming a mafia state. He was interviewed in yesterday's Sunday Times Business Times. Don't know if you saw it, but Mamoniat says the country needs to deal urgently with money laundering and financial crimes. New report by an Intergovernmental Financial Action Task Force has identified major weaknesses in our country's capacity to deal with these issues. We need a way, as a society, of getting some sense as to why it takes so long to investigate financial crimes, says Mamoniat. Why hasn't anybody from the Steinhoff thing been charged, he asks. The Guptas are in the Emirates. When did our agencies ask the Emirates or India for information about the Guptas? And if they did, why is it taking so long to arrest them? The fact of the matter, he says, is that it pays to be a criminal in South Africa. So by the same token, why are the SOEs just getting worse and worse? It's a personal opinion, but one very obvious reason is that far from being under control, state capture is still very much on the go, still very much at work. And that's why the various law enforcement agencies are, shall we say, so reluctant, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, to take any action. It's the only thing I can see.
Where would you say then do whistleblowers fit into this picture, Chris?
In general, in this country, they don't, although there are some notable exceptions. Our former colleague, Mandy Wiener, wrote a book on the topic published about this time last year, and she makes it clear that whistleblowers here are seldom seen as heroes. Instead, they're often viewed through a negative lens, described as troublemakers, disloyal employees, traitors, snitches, impimpies, informers if you prefer. Some have even been killed as a result. Witness Babita Deokaran, Director of Finance in the Gauteng Department of Health, some months back. And contrast all of this, Jeremy, with the former employee of Deutsche Bank in the United States, who last week received a payout of $200 million for blowing the whistle on the LIBOR rate rigging scandal. Now, that's the biggest payout in whistleblowing history, made, as I say, in the US, and followed this person handing over large amounts of information to the authorities, which resulted in Deutsche being fined $2.5 billion. LIBOR, the London Interbank Borrowing Rate, being phased out. As Mandy says at the end of her book, we need to bring whistleblowers into the light and to reward them.
I suppose this brings up a whole lot of question marks about the whole power transition and the funding of it and so on as well.
Well, very much so. And just in case you missed it, we're looking to develop a plan worth $500 million to fund the transition away from coal. 500 million, just a fraction, by the way, of what would ultimately take to move us completely away from coal via gas to renewables like solar and wind. Just drafting this particular plan will need $1 million US, according to Environment Minister Barbara Creasy. So yeah, the money is available, provided the right kind of government guarantees are in place to back the loans. After all, would you lend money to South Africa right now, given our track record? Waste, destruction, theft. Well, I tell you what, I would lend that money, but only at the right price, somewhere around 10% or more, and only with the most rock-solid and cast-iron guarantees from the government.
Okay, changing tack here. It looks like we could be getting an interest rate hike next month, Chris.
Well, we've had several very broad hints to that effect from Reserve Bank Governor Lesetja Kganyago, Jeremy. The latest coming in the wake of last week's 5% consumer inflation number. That's for September, the fifth month on the trot that inflation's come in above the 4.5% midpoint of the Reserve Bank's 3 to 6% target range. Kganyago says very clearly interest rates will be hiked if inflation persists. Well, 5 months in a row starts to feel pretty persistent to me. And the folk who speculate in these things are betting on a rate hike of 0.25% in November.
A call as well to boost the tourism industry. This is an interesting one and makes perfect sense to me by changing the ways that we celebrate public holidays.
Indeed, it comes from low-cost airline Fly South Air, which has called on government to restructure all public holidays to fall on either a Friday or a Monday. Why is that? Well, because according to Fly South Air, whenever the public holiday falls in such a way as to create a genuine 3-day long weekend, passenger volumes go up by 20%. Now, if there's a specific date associated with the holiday, like June 16th, for example, the day itself could be recognized as just a day of observance. I think it's a terrific idea, and it is the way, as I'm sure you're aware, many holidays are marked in the US and UK. Not all, but most of them.
Yeah. Now, there's another thing I wanted to raise with you. You were talking about a book. Who's it? Peter Thiel, the Silicon Valley billionaire. Tell us more about it. Have you managed to get your hands on that and read it? Because you mentioned it quite a few weeks ago.
I did indeed, Jeremy. The book is called The Contrarian, Peter Thiel and Silicon Valley's Pursuit of Power. Published by Bloomsbury, written by Bloomberg journalist Max Chafkin, 345 Rand. So let me start with a question. Who and or what is Peter Thiel? Yes, we know he's a billionaire many times over, one of the founders of PayPal, a controlling shareholder of Palantir, very early backer of Facebook, also, of course, of Elon Musk's SpaceX, and generally Mr. Big in Silicon Valley. He's also a chess prodigy, he's gay, he's a close backer of Donald Trump, has personally donated money to at least 4 politicians from the radical right wing of the Republican Party in the US. He's a self-proclaimed libertarian and someone who launched a successful vendetta against an online media outlet called Gawker, which had taken a dislike to him. And it's these apparent contradictions, allied to Thiel's intense liking for privacy, that Chafkin investigates. The title gives a clue. Chafkin describes Thiel as a contrarian, someone who has specialized in swimming against the tide his entire life, more often than not with spectacular success. So the central question is why? Is it just pursuit of money or pursuit of power? Both? Could Thiel's sexual orientation and the fact that he remained in the closet for so long have also played a role? And by the way, I don't know if you know this, a small part of his childhood was spent in Johannesburg. He went to Pridwin, the private prep school, before spending time in Swakopmund in Namibia. But Chafkin's tale really picks up with Thiel at California's Stanford University, where he founded a monthly newspaper called the Stanford Review. Stanford Review, a conservative tabloid, virulently opposed to all things politically correct and run through with what his critics say is a thick streak of racism. Chafkin leads us chronologically through Thiel's life, through his career, right up to his present-day appearances at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida, his post-White House headquarters. Thiel himself, his husband, their small children now also live in Florida. having apparently abandoned Silicon Valley and its typically liberal views. However, a close reading of The Contrarian, I think, will persuade you that the Valley is much more conservative, much more dedicated to power and money than most of us actually realize. So this is a work that's impeccably researched, as you'd expect from a Bloomberg journalist. It's supplied with meticulous notes, but Chafkin concedes readily many of his sources spoke to him on condition of anonymity. Put simply, Thiel has a reputation for vindictiveness, and the sources are worried that he would at some point in the future reach out and crush them, just as he did with the online blog Gawker and its parent company Gawker Media back in 2016. What happened? Well, Gawker had long been a thorn in Thiel's side after it outed him as gay in 2007. So patiently, but absolutely ruthlessly, Thiel seized an opportunity when he could back wrestler Hulk Hogan in a case against Gawker. Hogan was suing Gawker after it posted a sex tape of him online. The tech billionaire, supposedly a proponent of free speech, supposedly supported Hogan to the tune of $10 million, winning his case for him and driving Gawker and its co-founder Nick Denton into bankruptcy. So the story of Thiel's revenge, well known, and I have no doubt that Chafkin would have thought long and hard about it before proceeding with his own less than flattering biography. In the end, he puts flesh onto the bones of Thiel's story, but does he untangle those key contradictions, especially at a personal level? At one stage, the billionaire agrees to an interview with Chafkin for the book, but it never happens. That's a pity. I now know a great deal more about Peter Thiel, but I'm still uncertain as to what really makes him tick. Once again, Jeremy, the book is The Contrarian, Peter Thiel and Silicon Valley's Pursuit of Power by Bloomberg journalist Max Chafkin, published by Bloomsbury at 345 Rand.
Now, speaking of books, I believe it's either just come out or it is coming out soon, but there's a book by, oh man, you would know because I think he defended most of the media companies that we've worked for before, David Dyson.
Absolutely right.
He
it has just been published. It's called The Good Nigerian.
Was he with Weber Wenzel or with Beldur Hall, wasn't he?
Beldur and Hall. He was a senior partner at Beldur and Hall, one of the country's top media lawyers. Back in the 80s, he then was involved with redrafting the broadcast regulations. He was a founding member of African Media Entertainment, and now he's turned his hand to novel writing. Should we get him on? Should I chat to him?
I think we should have a chat with him in the near future, Chris. Good call.
I'll get it set up.
Nice one. Chris Gibbons, thank you very much for joining us once again on this Monday. We'll chat to you next week.
Thanks, Jeremy. Look forward to it. Take care.
No, take care as well. Nice thing about Chris, you never know what you're going to get. You could get a book review. You could get... I'm surprised he didn't even bring up the Manchester United-Liverpool game, actually. But that's maybe for another time. Thank you for joining us. If you did enjoy it, don't forget to hit subscribe. And we'll catch you once again next week with Chris Gibbons, courtesy of Capital Legacy. Goodbye.